This is just the summary about the biopharmaceutical application in fourth industrial revolution, and not in the contrary case. How biopharma can take benefit from this revolutionary evolution, let me say, or trend or wave that we are living nowadays. Well, I don't know how much closer are you to the biopharmaceutical industry, if you are more closer to the health and medical devices or to the medical value chain, but let me share with you that biopharmaceutical is a very strong, robust, and constant industry where we have all the steps and phases very well defined, and it's very difficult to break this structure, these steps. So it's very rigid because, remember, we are serving to patients. So usually the biopharmaceutical industry is split in different operations, different phases, like, for example, research and development. How the fourth industrial revolution technologies can help in research and development. Well, here you have a summary of the most important technologies helping nowadays in this stage of biopharmaceutical in research and development. So using AI, big data, cloud, digital twin, and biosensoring, we are able to create quality, a more robust quality by design concept. I don't know if you are familiar to this concept, the quality by design, but quality by design was promoted by the FDA in 2008. So it's a very old concept. But to be honest, just a few companies are applying nowadays quality by design in their processes, because that requires a huge effort if they use paper or if they use classical systems like spreadsheets in Excel files, or maybe a combination of notebooks. So quality by design means that you are able to identify the most critical variables that are affecting to your process, and you are able to identify how they are exchanging between themselves the values and the behavior in order to get at the end the expected result. Quality by design means that you are able to implement quality in the product, in the process product, since the beginning till the end, but not in the classical approach. So, for example, usually in biopharmaceutical industries, we are acting when there is an error, there is an issue, we are reacting to that. Well, the thing is that using quality by design, there is not a space for errors, because you are considering everything that could be involved in the process. That means a lot of science, that means a lot of knowledge in the process. And if we are realistic, and probably if you are coming from the biopharma industry, you have experimented that, usually in this industry, we are making a lot of approaches. For example, linear approaches, or just including a few variables in our studies, 2 or 3 variables. But the reality is more complex. When we talk about CPPs, when we talk about critical material attributes, when we talk about all these kind of things, the reality that we are imagining is so complex, and we cannot represent the reality with just a couple or a few variables following a linear approach. This is not realistic. For the reason it's very difficult to create quality by design nowadays with the existing tools. So nowadays, tools like AI, big data, or digital twins can help a lot. And we will see that in the specific sessions that we're gonna present the specific technologies. When we talk about digital twin, when we talk about AI, you will see the real use cases in detail, because yesterday we made just an overview about some use cases, but we will go deeply in some real use cases in order to know how we can use these technologies in order to improve our stages. Well, maybe scale up at tech transfer is a diamond in the biopharmaceutical industry. Every single company that is working with products in multi-sites between continents or across the world, their main pain is always tech transfer and scale up. For example, one of the top 5 companies, top 5 biopharmaceutical companies, they are spending millions of dollars and years. We're not talking about months, we're talking about years in order to create a good tech transfer between 2 different countries. Years. So the average is 3 years in order to have the same performance from one country to another one. Well, biosimilars is the other field that is taking advantage of these new technologies and also the drug repurposing. Well, clinical trials is maybe the most famous one. There are a lot of articles that you can read in the scientific literature, like for example, AstraZeneca, how AstraZeneca is using AI and big data in order to cross patients' data to detect adverse effects with a small sample of patients, of volunteers. This is a very good way to detect adverse effects. And once we are in manufacturing, in drug manufacturing, we have more technology that they are helping a lot. Well, process validation, real-time release. The real-time release is the gold, is the grail that everyone is looking for in the real life. Everyone in biopharmaceuticals would like to have a real-time release. Usually, when you finish your batches, these batches, they have to wait in the warehouse till quality control, quality assurance, they are approving the batch ready to be released and to be served in the pharmacies. We can wait for weeks, and this material is in the warehouse, and the full company is losing power. Well, golden batch is the other one that everyone is looking for. How to improve the yield of our processes. We will see that in detail in the next sessions. How to avoid potential issues before they happen. The OEE, the overall efficient equipment that we talked yesterday. How to reduce the risk. So these kind of areas, they are nowadays they are taking benefits from all these technologies. Again, in logistics and distribution, the same. So we're talking about drones, we're talking about blockchain. We will see why blockchain can help. It's not only for Bitcoins that could be useful, also to establish traceability. We will see that. And finally, what happens with surveillance? Do we have to wait in order to detect an issue or an anomaly in the drugs that we have distributed around a country in order to make the batch retirement? Or could we predict something? Could we detect an anomaly before that is going worse? Well, these kind of things can be managed by the surveillance area. That's true that the fourth industrial revolution means today digitalization. But digitalization is not only creating digital controls for phases, areas, sites, working cells, units, hospitals, rooms. The idea is that digitalization is beyond the concept of creating electronic data, records in electronical operations in order to get information. The final goal, the real goal of the fourth industrial revolution is at the end, remember the innovation concept of the fourth industrial revolution, open mindset, open innovation. The final goal is to connect the different systems that they are providing value by themselves in order to have an aggregated information, an aggregated system that is bringing more value than the isolated islands by themselves. So for this reason, we have many pieces. Of course, we have machine learning, we have big data, we have 5G connections, Internet of Things, a lot of different technologies. But if you use them, if you use these technologies in a separated way, without connect the inputs and the outputs that every technology is offering to you, you are creating another barrier in the future. So you are preparing now a new handicap in the middle term. So please, if you are planning to implement a fourth industrial revolution in your area, and you have only budget for a couple of technologies, or you have budget just or resources just for a pilot, please, let's go with this pilot, let's go with these technologies. But it's very important that in the strategy, in the roadmap, you have to include how to connect in the future all the systems that you are gonna introduce in the process. Otherwise, you will increase the magnitude of the problem because you will have, again, enormous, large data sets that they are not connected between them. Okay, so remember that this is, believe me, because I have suffered that several times in with other projects, and when the companies, they are not considering this stage, this maturity stage in the future, if they cannot afford that since the beginning, when the future arrives and that happens, they have a huge problem. It's bigger than before. So this is really, really important. Well, let's start with some magnitude, some order of magnitudes. Well, when we talk about digitalization, and we will see just in the next slide, when we talk about digitalization, we are talking about electronic data, and probably you have a background in life science, and if you're curious and you like also the informatics and this kind of electronic systems, you know what does a byte means. Well, a byte could be identified with a letter in informatics. Well, the thing is, the important thing is that we're generating nowadays per day, we're generating 5 exabytes. So this is too many or not? Well, just to imagine how bigger is that. Could you imagine? Well, more or less, one book could be enclosed more or less in a megabyte, more or less, in the order of a megabyte, more or less. Well, the thing is that if we put stacked all the books that we need in order to fulfill just 1 exabyte, not 5, 1 exabyte, the thing is that we can arrive practically from the surface of the Earth to the moon, practically. So we need just 10,000 miles in order to reach the surface of the moon. So this is the amount of information that we're generating every day. And the most amazing thing is that maybe is that the 90% of the all data that we have in the world today has been created just in the last 24 months. So in the last 2 years, we have generated more than the 90% of the data that we have around the world. And this is increasing. So this is maybe just is obsolete nowadays. And from where is coming this information? From where? Well, this is more or less the information in big numbers. No, a ship is generating per day a huge ship. These ships that they are surfacing they are traveling across the seas, transporting these big containers. They are generating per day 1.5 terabytes. A jet engine is generating 2.5 terabytes because they need to gather this information and they are analyzing continuously this information. Could you imagine? A Tesla, a connected car, this is the example of the Tesla, driving 8 hours per day is generating 4 terabytes per car. So the data that we're generating is really, really large amount of information. And this information is coming from all those systems that they are industrial systems, but also for smartphones, also for your smartwatch, also for the session that we are recording today is generating data. Okay. Well, the thing is that all this information that we are generating is stored in somewhere and is generated for somewhere. Well, this is the concept of digitalization. How we can get knowledge, how we can extract knowledge from this digitalization. Do you remember yesterday we used the allergy disease using Google Trends in order to identify potential ways to get knowledge. Do you remember we tried to correlate the allergy disease with the cetirizine as the medicine used for to treat the allergy, and we tried to correlate that with flowers. Do you remember that? Well, the thing is that the magic of this aggregation of data, when we're talking about tons and tons of bytes, it's very difficult to find out science, really science. But the good thing is that in this magic of aggregation, when you are finding granularity and when you are going deeply and you drill down in the data, when you detect anomalies, this anomaly is bringing value. This is out of the normality. And this is, for example, how stocks and how the fintech industry works with. Fintech is a very beneficial industry, and they are taking benefits, for example, when they are purchasing or selling stocks in the market, in the floor, in the stock house, and they know when to sell, when to buy these stocks, depending on this granulation, depending on these outliers that they can identify. So rather than to try to identify patterns, nowadays it's more useful to look for this kind of anomalies when you are going to the granularity and the aggregation. This is very, very good. Well, yesterday we talked about the veracity when we when we went to the allergy example in Google Trends, remember? Nowadays, today, I would like to introduce also the concept of validity. The validity of the data that we are using is so crucial when we are talking about medical and health care. The validity means that if we look for outliers in our patterns, and we will see different examples today, when we see or we can detect these outliers, we have to identify if in these outliers there are bias or not. And this is a crucial point in order to get veracity in the data. So maybe you have big data, maybe you have a huge volume of information with a variety of information, but you need to trust in this data, in the origin of this information, and also in the validity of this information. What does it mean, validity? Do you know the metadata concept? Metadata is the information that is not inside the value itself, is close to the value, but that sometimes brings more information than the value itself. For example, if I say, or if I can read in a big data table, let me say, I can read 5.5, 5.6, 5.7 millions of records like this. This is value that could be in a huge volume, could be that they are coming from a trustable and reliable source, but which is the validity of this value? I need the unit of measures. So I need to know if these numbers are pHs, if they are densities, they are temperatures, what they are. So the validity is coming with the metadata associated to the data. So with only one number, we don't have anything. When we talk about big data, unit of measure is a clear example in the science field. But when we talk about big data, we have to talk about timestamp. And timestamp requires to be in UTC. And if you want, we're talking about big data, and you will see that big data is so cheap nowadays. Why not to add more information? For example, the time zone where this data was acquired. So in this case, we have UTC is the standard measure of the time in the Earth. We have the time zone where this data was acquired. We will have the unit of measure. What about the geolocation? What about the user or the equipment that is producing this data? What about if we take also the information of the IP address, the MAC address that has generated this data, and so on? So could you see the amount of metadata that we can add around every single byte that we receive? Well, when we are talking about validity, we're talking about this metadata. Is the extra information that we need to add for every single record that at the end will bring value. Because digitalization means that you are preparing all your data sets, all your information ready to be used for any kind of purpose that you cannot imagine at the beginning. So I think that some fact that you can experiment when you are working with the fourth industrial revolution is that when you start with a project, it appears many other collateral benefits that you couldn't imagine before. And this is thanks to the validity of the data. That is thanks to the metadata around every single byte. So for the reason, when we saw these numbers, we can imagine that every single value of a jet in a plane flying from Barcelona to San Francisco is not only the numbers of the turbine revolutions per minute, it's also geolocation, it's also wind direction, it's also height, how this is the speed. So there are many factors, there are many metadata around every single byte that we are saving. So this is a concept that is so crucial to understand what we are going to talk today about medical value chain. Well, do you know, now let's talk about the hospitals, let's talk about this medical value chain. Let's start well, step by step. Do you know how much data is being generated in your hospital, more or less? Well, pure data, when we talk about pure data, we are talking about between 1 and 10 petabytes per year. Only pure data without metadata, only values that could be patients, could be temperatures, could be blood pressures. Every single value that we get in a hospital is aggregated in between 1 and 10 petabytes per year. Do you think that this is a huge number or not, more or less? Well, the thing is that, let me put an example. This data is coming from a classical or typical hospital that we have in Catalonia here in Spain. This is the number that we are talking about. In a normal hospital in Catalonia, we have more or less 46 millions of primary visits per year. And we have 760,000 admissions per year. Well, the thing is that we had around 3 million of emergency visits per year. And we had more or less 370 equipments per primary attention. Well, this is the magnitude of things that they are happening nowadays in a normal hospital. But if you think in the outputs that we can measure in terms of values of data, well, imagine a genotype, codified genotype, we will see that later. Codified genotype requires 3 gigabytes to be described. So one human being can be summarized with only 3 gigabytes. This is nothing. This is the old DVD concept. 3 gigabytes. We can enclose all the information of one human being. Well, if you are making a Ray X test, a plate, you will need 30 megabytes. This is nothing. 120 for each mammography, 1 gigabyte for each 3D control scan. If you are doing a magnetic resonance, we require only 150 megabytes. So this is nothing. This is nothing. Well, the thing is that every year seems that the increment of this information, this data that we are generating at hospitals are between 20 and 40%. And the thing is that this is not the full data. Practically the 80% of the data that we have in hospitals are non-structured data. So that means comments coming from doctors, electronic health records, medical health records, progressions, follow-ups, surveillance. So all those information are non-structured data, and a lot of knowledge is behind this data. So we can consider structured data, the codified genotype, the information that we have in the Ray X test, all these kind of outputs are considered structured data because we can aggregate all together. We can sum apples with apples, orange with orange. But the 80% of the data that we are generating in a hospital is non-structured. Well, this is more or less the data volume that we're generating classically. And well, with this data, if you can fly your imagination, could you imagine how much data we are managing today in a country if we are able to aggregate all those information coming from hospitals? Well, we are at the same point that we started today. How to bring value for all those interconnected systems if we are not able to connect, if we are not able to see patterns because it's so complex, it's so, let me say, unstructured. Well, this is an example that I would like to have you. This is something that you can do by yourself. Well, the thing is that past year, I had a conference with the WHO in order to explain a plan to make a committee that could take care about problems that could arise at global overview, at global context. Imagine that. If you go to Google Trends, remember the Google Trends tool? I'm insisting with this tool because it's a very curious tool that is accessible for everyone and is gathering information for everywhere, from everyone for around the world. Well, I tried today to do the following exercise. If you look for severe acute respiratory diseases in 2020 worldwide, you look for vaccine and you look for COVID-19 term, and this is something that you can do by yourself, this experiment. Well, this is the result. So I made a zoom. I made a zoom here. I made a zoom in this area. Well, this is the interest. Do you remember the page yesterday? This is the interest of people about these terms, about COVID-19, about vaccine, about severe acute respiratory diseases. Well, it seems that it was a peak in August about COVID-19, COVID interest. But also, we have a peak in March 22. Probably you remember these dates. At least in Spain, around these dates, we announced the lockdown for the COVID. But this information is so nice when you see the interest country by country, region by region. Okay, so I think that this exercise is very good. But let me go to the details about why I introduce that in this conference of the WHO. If we go, or if we try to look for anomalies, look for causalities, if you do the same exercise around about November, but making different looks, different questions, maybe you can look for severe acute respiratory syndrome, and you can look for pneumonia. Okay, if you do that and you make a zoom, not the past 12 months, maybe we can go to the slide. Here, if we look for these terms, you will see that in more or less in December, people was more interested worldwide in severe acute respiratory syndrome, and it was a peak regarding pneumonia. What could be the cause of this problem or this interest? Well, let me make a zoom on this area that you see here. If we do a zoom, the thing that we can see is the following thing. Well, in December 23rd of 2019, we identify the first peak regarding people that they are so interested on pneumonia and severe acute respiratory. And if you go to the region areas, you will see that in Asia, there were more people interested on those topics. Well, in the WHO announced in the 31st of December 2019, they reported a cluster of cases of pneumonia that happens in the last day of the 2019. But could you see that 8 days before we could identify this anomaly? Okay, so this is the importance of the data. This is the importance when you are able to aggregate information. You are able to detect anomalies that could provoke something that is not is unexpected. Okay, so this is the added value when you are able to transform unstructured data, like queries that people are doing in Google, in unstructured data like medicines that you are buying in the pharmacist, unstructured data that emergency hospitals, how many patients we have recorded at hospitals in emergency situations. All those data that they are completely unstructured, they are not related apparently, when you are able to aggregate them, you can take benefit. In terms of digitalization, the first goal to take value is detecting anomalies. When you are able to detect something that is outside the normality. I hope that this example works for you, because well, that could be a very good tool also for companies like you when you are trying to get value from data worldwide. We will see again this Google Trends tool in another example, because I think that this is so good, because we can do that on the flight, on real time with you. You can do it by yourself. You can make your own queries, and we see that there is something realistic behind the interest of people. On the other hand, I think that it's important to mention that when we are talking about digitalization, we have mentioned the metadata concept. This is the validity of the concept. As many data you have, the validity is increasing. Why? Imagine that you have some perturbance, some bias inside the data that you are managing. This bias could be, could be hide beyond, or could be blind behind, behind the data coming from the majority of the data. So usually when you have a huge amount of data, this data is following a Gaussian distribution, taking out all those outliers or parts that they are so far away from the average. So as many data you have, you can mitigate the effects of potential bias and potential bias and potential outliers. So this is really good, as many data you have. So that again is going in the same direction than we talked at the beginning. Please try to connect everything. In your roadmap, we have to have in mind always the possibility to interact with all the systems that they are providing data, digital data, in order to have value at the end. Well, focusing more in the welfare society. Well, it's important to manage this kind of bias or alterations in the data, in the digital data, and even more in the medical field. The top 10 causes of death in low-income countries in 2002 were lower respiratory infections and AIDS, diarrheal diseases, stroke, ischemic heart diseases. This is the top 10 causes of death in the low-income countries. Too many years ago, but it's just to make a reflection about the bias. But if we go to the top 10 causes of death in high-income countries in the same year, you can see that the diseases were so different. For example, here we have a stroke, we have Alzheimer's disease, we have chronic respiratory diseases. So, well, we see that the top 10 causes are really, really different. So it depends a lot, or let me say another way. When you are managing data in order to get knowledge, in order to transform this data into knowledge, you have to take care about the bias that you are introducing from your perspective or your context. For this reason, it's so important, the validity. For this reason, it's crucial to have as many metadata as we can in the data. So if we are talking about deaths, for example, we need to know from which country we are talking about, because otherwise we can mix root causes in the data that we are analyzing. Okay, so this is so crucial. Well, let's go again. I'm repeating a lot of times these 3 Bs. It's like a leitmotiv that we will see several times during this workshop. I strongly believe that it's necessary that you consider these 3 Bs. The variety, so we don't have big data, we don't have good data if the data is always the same. If we have only temperatures, if we have only pHs, or only have densities, this is nothing. you need to have a variety of information in order to have real data. If we have volume, that's good. And finally, we need to access to this information quickly, effectively. Otherwise, it's not manageable. Okay. Well, someone yesterday mentioned the 5.0 initiative. And if you remember, I told you that personalized medicines is a good example for the 5.0 industrial revolution that is coming. Because at the end, the fifth industrial revolution would be the customization of the fourth industrial revolution. Well, let me share with you my own definition of personalized medicines. From my perspective, the real definition for personalized medicine is to have the right drug for the right patient at the right time. And this is very related with these three V's, with variety, volume, and velocity. But remember, we need veracity and we need validity on the data that we are managing if we want to apply that in medical environments. This is so crucial. Otherwise, we cannot rely on data. We cannot, the conclusions cannot be trustable, cannot be accepted by the health authorities. This is so crucial. I don't know if you share with me the same definition, or you would like to have your own definition, but this is mine, and I think that it's close to the reality. So nowadays, in the medical life, maybe because doctors are completely collapsed by the pandemic, I don't know why, we are losing the focus on the patient, on the individuality of each patient. Each patient needs their own drug because every single human being is different. And even more, the time where we are making this treatment is so crucial. Sometimes it's a question of weeks that we can save a life or not. Okay, so I think that this definition could be at least something like food for thought. Let's go to the digital health. We're talking about a new concept of health. I don't know classically which is the definition that you have in your mind and you have learned in your academical journey, in your professional environment, but nowadays, the digital health is not considered like to treat diseases. Nowadays, digital health is more oriented to be healthy, to don't have diseases. So the assumption of the digital health, and this is a paradigm shift, this is a completely change of mindset. The new digital health is based on the basics that there is not, or there should not be patients with some chronic diseases or diseases in general. It's very different than the classical one that the health is always how to treat this disease. The difference is that potentially all the efforts nowadays in the digital health are totally oriented to avoid, to reduce the risks that could at the end lead to diseases. So it's more preventive than reactive. And this paradigm shift is changing a lot, the medical feeling about how to manage patients. Because, well, companies that they are dedicated to the health, they are putting more focus, more attention in order to keep healthy their users rather than to, to treat critical cases. Of course, we're talking about humans, and the medical systems and medical operations are always, or they have to work with patients with diseases in order to treat this kind of maladies. But the orientation is to be preventive. Okay, this is very, very important in order to know how we can bring value in our products, in our services, if we are working in this medical sector. Okay, let me put some examples. Which kind of changes we are living nowadays in healthcare? Well, in this case, we're talking about the data that is generated by patients. The thing is that social media, like Twitter, like Facebook, they are being used by companies, by health companies, in order to recover and to gather data to establish statistics. Nowadays, in past year, in 2020, patients were generating 25,000 petabytes of information just in social media. And social media is a very easy way to scan health and medical topics. For example, if you publish a news to your social media about that you have a flu, or that you feel bad because of the pollution, whatever. So these kind of comments are being analyzed day by day, by millions of companies that they are trying to extract knowledge from the health state of patients. Well, even more, I don't know if you have a Fitbit in your training, or if you're using your mobile when you are running, or you're making your fitness classes. Well, the thing is that this mobile data in your iWatch and your smartphones, they are generating a lot of data. Actually, the CAGR, that is the compound annual growth rate, is estimated in the 40% of increase year. Okay, so this is important because that brings value to your services. Even more, when we talk, for example, about the price of the personal genome sequencing, has fallen dramatically. So nowadays, the price, if you want to make your own genome sequenced, you have to pay less than $1,000, and you have the copy of yourself in a genome sequencing paper. This is really amazing. And well, the thing is that the personalized medicine diagnostic has increased a lot since the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution announcement. Let me bring some nice use cases with companies like Kaiser Permanente. I don't know if you know Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente is one of the most important and bigger companies around the world, managing health services and medical services. They are located in the US, and only in California, they have more than 10 millions of users. Could you imagine that? More than 10 millions of users just in one state, in the US state. Could you imagine how many data they are generating? Well, the thing is that Kaiser Permanente is offering to their customers the possibility to reduce the price of the monthly fees that they are paying if they accept to be interviewed by a chatbot, by a smart robot, if they accept to be interviewed by this chatbot, and they reduce the fees that they're paying. Well, the thing is that people was accepting that because there is a reduction in the price. The thing is that they get so happy, the people that accepted that, and Kaiser Permanente nowadays are increasing the number of telephone visits using chatbots. So no human beings behind the telephone. There are robots that they are interacting with patients because they have found that there is a pattern where they can deliver, or they can classify all those calls in critical, non-critical, classical. This is a flu, this is a classical problem with fever, whatever. And well, they are going very well. In the Premier Hospital, they are using, they have reduced a lot of resources, and they have increased a lot the value that they are offering. Why? Because in the Premier Hospital, they have a lot of members, as you can see here, 2,700 members between all the hospitals. They are mixing, or they are merging all data that they have. And with all those data that they have already merged, they can find patterns that no one has identified before, or anomalies that is very easy and very quickly to be identified and to reduce the problems, potential problems. Well, They are reducing nowadays nearly $7 billion using this technology because they go fast to the root cause of a problem. Asmapolis is a company that I presented yesterday regarding the GPS inhaler. Do you remember? In Kentucky, the real use case were using just a smart device for asthmatics. The Kentucky population, they were advised about which kind of area they could go or not go, depending on their diseases. And finally, I would like to highlight this Johns Hopkins School of Medicine in the US. Well, I don't know if you know the history of this school, but it's very interesting. They used Google Flu. Google Flu Trends is a very similar tool like Google Trends that I presented several times in the workshop. They used that by the first time, and they were using this Google Flu Trends. Sorry, they used Google Trends, the same tool that we used, in order to know if people was infected or not, or it was a pandemic on flu. Only that, based on the queries that people were doing in Google by specific medicines, by specific drugs, by specific symptoms. They analyzed this information and they were able to prevent or to detect the flu that the US suffered in 2010. They detected that before the Center of Diseases in the US. Okay, just doing that. And Google Flu Trends is this tool. Let me share with you. Is this one. So if you look for this tool, Google Flu Trends, you can see this tool. This is the information, or this is the graphic of all queries that people is using when they look for flu or concept related to flu. Only in Spain. Well, we see a peak in Spain, more or less in January. In January again, in January. So we can identify peaks in January only in Spain. What about if we try to look for other countries where we have data in Google? For example, I don't know, let me look for Mexico. Well, Mexico is the red one. We see similar trends when we are close to January, maybe before January, in some cases in December, November, in some cases later. We have also an interest in the flu concept. And if we go, for example, to Belgium, we see that, well, it seems that the peaks are really overlapped. Which kind of difference we can see? Well, the first thing that we can identify is that maybe the Belgian people is more worried about the flu because we have more interaction with the concept. Okay, so this is the tool that's available, and this is the tool that was used by the Hopkins Hospital. Do you know why we don't have more data? Could you imagine why? Why the data has been stopped in 2016? Well, let me share with you the real reason about why we don't have more data in this tool. The reason was that when people understood that they could go to Google and make queries and check what happens in their country regarding flu or regarding other diseases, the problem was that doctors, patients, healthcare systems, everyone was looking for diseases or something related with flu. The problem was that the data was not useful, was not valid anymore, because people is introducing their own bias when they know that they can have value from the data. And this is something that happens, and I think that this is the best example that I can bring to you today regarding validity of the data and how much important is that. When people knows that they can influence on their data and they are actively looking for or adding more data for something that is not real or is not natural, let me say, because in this case, doctors were looking at Google constantly, making queries constantly, in order to know which were the region where more people was interested in flus. So that was provoking this problem. So the data was not valid anymore. And for the reason, we don't have more data in this tool in Google Flow. Okay. So please think about when we are talking about medical value, medical value chain value in digitalization, in the digitalization concept, because this is so crucial. I'm taking in mind this example because it's good to know. Well, let's go again to the personal data, to the fifth industrial revolution based on the personal medicine. Well, the thing is that in the new ecosystem of technology, when data is available for everywhere and we can connect data from all the sources, it's easiest to link the biomedical information with the biopsychosocial information. And there are different studies, for example, in UK, when they try to figure out why the lung cancer was increasing in young people. But when they realized that the increase of lung cancer in young people were only in a specific sector of the population, in the people that was more acquisitive power, when they were more well positioned in terms of economic reasons, they were completely shocked. And the problem was that in the high classes in the UK, it was a good way to see people if they were smoking. And the reason about the young people with more lung cancer was that socially was a change in the UK when the young people recognized that to smoke could be identified with the high society. So biomedical, biopsychosocial context can be or are really interacting between them. And the basics of the new personalized medicine is the genome. So this is the map in 2013. So the scientists were able to decodify the full genome of bacteria, yeast, the fly, the Drosophila, the spinac. In 2014, scientists were able to decodify the human genome, and it requires 3 gigabytes to be managed. Well, this is the same graphic that I presented before. This is the cost of sequencing a human genome since 2002 till 2016. Nowadays, it's just $500 that you need in order to codify your genome. It's nothing compared with the $100,000 that was required in order to decodify the first human genome. Could you see the evolution? It's dramatically. So I know that $500 is a considerable amount of money, but it's so important that you can save lives with knowing the critical information of each human being. And this is a little bit the history. So in the Human Genome Project that was between and 2003, they were trying just to decodify this genome process. But the ENCODE project that started in 2003, they tried to identify the relationships between every single SNP, the single nucleotide polymorphism. The idea that they were able to connect only those SNPs connected between themselves because they were explaining with a single relationship some genotype in humans, for example, the color of the eyes or whatever genotype. So they were able to connect the single nucleotides. Well, the thing is that if you, just to have a huge idea, this relationship map from 3 gigabyte, that is the genome decodification, till the full interactions, known interactions between the SNPs could be printed in a wall of 30 kilometers of length and 16 meters of height. Just to have a picture about how much complex is a human system based on genotype. And just to let you know also, this combination of very single SNP is just 1 square centimeter. So we have billions of these interactions in this map. This is so nice to see that, because we're talking about huge numbers only for one person. Well, this is the ENCODE project in numbers. I don't want to go item by item. I think that this, if you're curious, you can go to them. But it's important to mention that we're talking about a huge project that was a lot of countries involved on them. And well, thanks to that, and this ENCODE project are free. So this is the good thing. Remember, we were talking at the beginning of the workshop about open innovation. We were talking about how to connect open sources in order to have this open innovation. The thing is that the Genoma project and the ENCODE project are completely open, and we have this data available for you. So the only thing that you need is the tools, the 4th industrial technologies, in order to, well, put the pot boiling and to get knowledge from that. The data is there. So nowadays, for example, thanks to this project, 150 traits and diseases has been identified using genetics, these SNPs that they could be the responsible for these diseases. And this project was found only 800 SNPs associated. Remember, SNPs means only 1 by 1, but in the real life, when we are talking about complex diseases, one nucleotide could be related with more than one. This is a very simple, the most simple use case, but when a nucleotide is related to another one, provoking some diseases. But in the real life, we have that the genotype is affected for more than one connection. Okay, so this is an open field that is completely, a green field to take benefits. And this is how they are identifying that. So this is the 4, you already know that, but this is the 4 bases that we have in the DNA, the adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. And when some of these links, they are broken, there is a mutation that could lead diseases, a genetic disorder. Well, that could be managed nowadays thanks to this database that is open source, and everyone can access to that using big data and AI tools. Well, let me share that with you. Patients must be at the heart of what we do. When we talk about biopharmaceuticals, of course, but when we're talking about medical and health, this is even more important. So remember that everything that we do is for them. It's for them because we're serving to them. Remember that we have to have this new customer-oriented mindset, in this case, patient-oriented mindset, in order to serve better, in order to go deeply in the useful technology that we have nowadays. And I would like to bring some real use cases supported by papers that they are already published. The first one is, I like that because I was participating in a parallel project in the hospital of Vic in Catalonia. When people come to emergencies in the hospitals because they have some bone broken in the chest, well, the doctor, they take some X-ray plate and they analyze the broken bone, analyzing the problems and so on. And that's all. But these plates, these X-ray plates, they are not used for anything more than to check if there is a lesion, if there is an injury in the bone or in the system that people is going in the emergencies in the hospitals because they have pain. What about if these chest radiographs are analyzed by AI systems and IoT systems in order to know if something else could appear in the radiographs? And this is what these guys did, and this is what we did also in the big hospital. We managed thousands of radiographs only based on the chest radiographs, and we trained an algorithm of AI image vision recognition in order to detect automatically potential nodules of cancer. Well, do you know what happens? The 3% of the thousands of radiographs that we analyzed, detected a potential lung cancer. And this is a machine. It is a machine that is working alone with all these radiographs that we are not using for anything more than just the follow-up of the first diagnostics of the injury in the chest. This is something that is really, really great that the fourth industrial revolution is bringing to patients. Now, it's something to discuss or to debate. This is an ethical debate behind these tools about should we should we alert to the patients about this potential lung cancer or not? Well, this is another topic, but at least I think that it's important to know that robots nowadays can analyze better than humans thousands of radiographs by themselves, detecting anomalies that no one is looking at because we are in emergencies, we are in a hurry, we're in a rush, we are just focusing in broken bones and so on. Okay, but I think that this is a very good use case to share with you. More things. We have more medical use cases, the micro and nano cameras to watch inside the body. So nowadays we are using pills with nano cameras in order to investigate, to make research in the stomach, for example, looking for injuries in the stomach, and well, in order to provide also drugs with the precise delivery. So this camera with the pill is conducted through the stomach or through the system, and they are delivering the drug when they see or they identify the injury that we want to help. This is another use case that is using nanotechnology. But there are more in the medical use cases. Telesurgery specialists. This specialist was increased in the Afghanistan war. The thing is that surgical doctors were making some interventions in the helicopters when they were in the San Diego in the San Diego side. So from San Diego in the US, the medical surgicals were making intervention in the helicopters that were in Afghanistan. This is amazing. So they were using augmented reality, virtual reality, make the surgery planner in order to make the surgery intervention to people to the soldiers that were injured by the war. And I would like to introduce you this amazing topic. It's a project that we are working at the PDA, the Peripheral Drug Association, in collaboration with the Imperial College of London and also ASON. We're working in the following project. It's amazing. Do you know that the mRNA strategy, the mRNA technology, to be honest, is not very complex. So everyone can create a protein in order to beat, for example, in order to beat a virus like the mRNA. The problem is not the complexity of the chemical process, because it's not a biochemical, it's a chemical process. The problem is that we need a lot of phases, a lot of sequential steps in order to get at the end the RNA drug substance, the final goal. But could you see the amount of drug, the quantity of medicine that we're producing is so small. We're generating 300 milliliters in every single batch of this product. So we cannot take samples of this product in order to be analyzed in the laboratory, because all the content practically is the sample. So the criticality in the mRNA vaccine is not the process itself, is the technology that we have to put around the process in order to bring at the end a required or a minimum amount of drug. Well, what we are doing, we have created a digital twin using biosensors that are able to detect when the required density of DNA is produced in order to define when the process is ready to be delivered. And we're using biosensors in order to measure the quality and the amount of protein and the density of the proteins that is in the sample in order to say when the batch is ready to be delivered. This is used by biosensors. We are using IoT connected to the biosensors using cloud in order to put the huge amount of information that we need, and we are using AI in order to establish the definition. Well, this is an amazing project that at the end pretends to produce mRNA vaccines at hospitals. And this is the good thing. With that, if you are able to create a digital twin, you will be able to produce the vaccine at a small scale. And it is not needed huge rooms, huge equipments, and large equipments. At the end, the good thing about that is that you are gonna able to produce these vaccines at hospitals using digital twins. Well, more things. I think that this is a completely different field, but probably if you are making business and you are making, if you have a responsibility in your organization, that could bring value to you. This is the new way to understand the digital health technology, is the medical device. What does it mean, medical device? Well, you have here some definitions. The thing is that you can think in medical devices like a medical product that can be plugged in patients, can be inserted inside patients in order to provide health. This is the definition that we have from the FDA, okay? And it's very important to know that the FDA specifically, they consider software, sensors, not only the hardware, the physical thing, also the software that is leading the process as a medical device. So software could be medical devices, and actually software is medical device nowadays in order to heal people, okay? Let's talk about a little bit about this medical device world. In the traditional device world, we were talking about product development timeline. So in the classical approach, before to the digital health world, we were talking about months to years in order to determine if a medical device is good or not to put in the market. We were talking about a limited availability to make the follow-up in patients. And well, the FDA was accepting just a few submissions around the world regarding medical devices. But once we are able to apply the digitalization in the classical medical devices, we have transformed the wait time from months to years in the past to weeks to months nowadays, from the production to the market development. We were talking about a high availability data coming from patients. Why? Because we have the ability to connect data to the internet, and we have IoT, and we can collect this data in order to improve continuously the models, the AI models that they are delivering solutions and health to the patients. And the other thing is that the FDA has increased exponentially the volume of submissions that they have to accept regarding medical devices. So this is how digitalization, closed in the fourth industrial revolution context, is proposing regarding medical devices. So AI, software, algorithms, mathematics can be used as a medical device, and the FDA is proposing a workflow, a life cycle, to make the submission to be accepted for human users. This is really, really amazing, this news. Well, the thing is that this paper was published in 2020, only 1 year ago, and we have already hundreds of submissions for AI as a medical device. Could you see that? This is amazing. So AI can be done by everyone with good data. We will see that in a while. I would like also to talk about the ATMPs. Well, in this case, we're talking about an article, sorry to make a little bit of marketing, but in the ISP, in the pharmaceutical engineering, in the number of November, December 2021, so this month, I was co-author of this article, AI as a promise for advanced therapeutical medicines, for advanced therapy medicinal products. Okay. Well, in this case, we're explaining in this article how AI can bring value in the advanced therapy medicinal products, where personalized medicines is one of them. I encourage you to read this article because This is not normal that in a pharmaceutical journal, you can have AI articles or this kind of articles. So it's good. So these advanced therapy medicinal products is the promise for the personalized medicine in the near future. We're talking about gene therapy medicines. We're talking about somatic cell therapy medicines or tissue engineered medicines. Okay, at the end, all of these use cases are built using human cells, human tissues that we are transforming into personalized medicines. How to transform the DNA content, the DNA message using AI, how to transform that into drugs. This is it's something that we're describing in this article. I hope that you enjoy. Some reflections regarding all the medical topic that we are identifying nowadays. Let me put the example of the COVID-19 vaccine again, because it's something that we're living is so close to us. You see here the thing. The thing is that, well, this is the map at November 5th about the immunized population this month, the map that we have nowadays. As high as stronger is the color, more immunized is the population. Well, maybe your eyes are going to this area of the world where people is not immunized yet. Well, reflections. If we compare this map with the worldwide industrialization capabilities, we can identify some similarities regarding this area, this region around the world where we don't have the population already immunized. I think that this reflection could be also valid for other areas in the world. So I think that this is a good topic to think about, and it's important to consider that in our mindset. It's a similar table for the medical value chain. In this case, we have different phases. We have medical research, we have medical devices, hospitals, health management, and patient centricity. Here you have different examples that we have talked today. But I would like to explain, to introduce the robotics that we have not talked still in the workshop. Robotics is a critical technology that managed by AI and orchestrated by IoT can bring value to patients, like making exoskeletons for people with, for example, multiple sclerosis. Or when we talk about nanocameras that we have talked about, or when we talk about implants and prosthetics, this is amazing how you can make your own prosthetic using 3D printing, totally oriented to the specific patient. You are building for this specific patient the rotule or the elbow or whatever you need for them. So there are many. I think that I would like to emphasize, in terms of data, I would like to emphasize the health records and the medical records. The electronic health records and electronic medical records are some systems that some countries like the US, they're trying to standardize and harmonize all the health and medical information for every single patient, trying to standardize and trying to normalize in some way, because they realized that unstructured data contains a lot of knowledge and they cannot extract nowadays. Thanks to technologies like AI, big data, and cloud, and using also robots in order to analyze this information coming from PDF, applying OCR and OCV in order to recognize documents written by hand per doctors, and merging this information, aggregating this information with electronic records and so on, they are able to detect anomalies and to make cross-reference between diseases to identify fast and quickly potential anomalies in patients that are coming to emergencies. This is a reality nowadays. And remember the last topic that I mentioned before, the biopsychosocial control. This is so crucial, and that will be key in the immediate future if we want to go to the fifth industrial revolution, if we want to customize the medical support. When we talk about not only the biological aspects of every single individual when we talk about the genome. Also, how this genome is interacting with the psychosocial environment in order to find out clusters, categories that could lead to a specific disease that no one was taking, paying attention.